I beg of the government to be big, to accept that this was rushed through, it wasn't thought out, and it's a mistake. And back down.
The United Kingdom was the first country in the world to industrialise, to experience significant urbanisation, to see development beyond farms for a significant proportion of the population. Could this be why there seems to be a bit of a blind spot in the eyes of so many politicians for those that still continue to live traditional, rural, agricultural lives? Just because we moved away from being a mainly agricultural society before any other country in the world did, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't forget the important contribution that farmers make to our countryside and indeed to our national life. We always think of the United Kingdom as luscious green fields of rolling hedgerows. We can imagine what England looks like. But that's not natural. That's cultivated. That's farmland. If we imagine England before agriculture, it was woodland, it was marsh, it wasn't the luscious green rolling fields we all think about today. That was a consequence of family farmers. And it's family farmers who today have descended upon London to have their voice heard, who've been ignored for far too long by far too many politicians who have a deeply urban mindset. If we look at the current cabinet, if we look at the makeup of all of the people who are making the decisions with regard to this family farm tax, who are they? Keir Starmer is a Member of Parliament for Islington in Inner London. Steve Reed, the Environment Secretary, he's a Member of Parliament for Croydon, again for London. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is a Member of Parliament for Leeds, one of our largest cities. And even the Farming Minister, a man called Daniel Zeichner, he's the Member of Parliament for Cambridge, which is a city, of course. It's an important city, it's an academic city, it's not really a farming city. So it's easy to see how there's a blind spot here from our leading politicians, the people that have been making these decisions. Where are those rural MPs around the cabinet table? I can't see any. Where are the rural MPs involved in the decision-making process? I don't think they've been consulted. This is partly a problem with the Labour Party having gone from its fewest number of seats since 1935, that was their election result in 2019, to their largest number of seats almost ever in 2024. All of their senior politicians, the people that now make up the cabinet and the ministerial posts, almost all of them had to have been elected last time round under Jeremy Corbyn, when the rump Labour Party was reserved to its urban core. But does that mean that they've missed out on what the countryside thinks, missed out on what rural Britain thinks, and forgotten the fact that some of these family farms have been in the same hands for generation after generation after generation? On GB News today, it's been a privilege to report on what has been going on in Westminster. We've seen interviews with people who've had the same family farm in their family hands for 7, 8, 9, 10 generations. Are we really going to be the first generation in 10 or more generations to say that farm can no longer be handed down through no fault of the farmers? It's not their fault that the land that they own has shot up in value. In fact, if they were less altruistically minded, if they were more hard-nosed and capitalist about the whole thing, they might well have sold their land long ago and gone into far more productive industry. But they haven't. They've chosen to keep the tradition, to carry on being stewards of the land, because there's something deeper here about what farming is and what farming means to so many families of farmers. It's not that they're hard-nosed businessmen and women. It's that they care about the land, they care about their country. Has that been forgotten today? Well, there was one man who seems to be a lightning rod for all of those fears of farmers, for so many farmers who feel like for the first time, Parliament could now be ripping away their family business that has been such a long-lasting business for so many generations. That man wasn't a politician, though we did hear politicians speak today. That man was a former petrolhead, a television presenter who himself admitted to have been a city dweller for decades and only recently really learning the value of rural life. Yes, Jeremy Clarkson was the man who lit up the crowds, the man who everyone wanted to hear, the lightning rod for this movement and this farming revolt. Let's listen to what Jeremy Clarkson had to say.
Hello, everybody! You're right, I'm not supposed to be here, I'm not supposed to be talking, but we've got a few things to say. I lived in London 25, 30 years, and when I was here, like a lot of people who live in cities and go on Twitter, I thought farmers drove around in Range Rovers, moaning, until February, and then you all went skiing. And then about 5 years ago, I started farming. And I've come to understand just how unbelievably difficult it is, and complicated, and dangerous, and cold. Very cold. Even when we're harvesting, it's cold. And it's just the forest of costs that staggered me. Everyone down there, you know, a tractor, £200,000 for a medium-sized one. A combine, £500,000. All the equipment costs a fortune. And if you try to price what you're selling to accommodate that, there's just a lot of moaning. You get people saying, well, I shouldn't pay that. I can get a chicken from abroad. Yeah, you can. But it's so full of chlorine, it tastes like a swimming pool with a beak. And then you've got the environmentalists endlessly shouting at you, oh, your cows, they're altering the composition of the gases in the upper atmosphere, and your fertilizers ruining the trouty freshness of our streams and rivers. And I know sometimes you just think, what's the point? We're just trying to make breakfast, lunch and dinner, and it's just this endless whinging and there's no money in it. And the regulations. Some of you down there will know what I'm on about when I say we got a lot of GS4 this year on the farm. And we were told, oh, the sheep will love that. No, they don't. They're standing looking at it in the same way that a 5-year-old looks at an olive. They don't want to eat it. And so we have all of this complication and all of this cost. And there's very, very little money in it. Very little money, as you know. And then we got the budget. We had pickup trucks, double cab pickup trucks, being reclassified as company cars. 211% tax rise there. £50 carbon tax on a bag of fertiliser. The basic farm payments altered in such a way that we're getting a lot less than we thought we were going to get. And then there was the inheritance tax business. Honestly, I don't know where to start. I know you've heard a lot about it today, and I'm not going to dwell on that. I will just say this. Rachel Reeves has told us, what is it, 72%? 72% of farms are going to be unaffected by this. I've just been interviewed by Victoria Derbyshire for Newsnight. Let's see if we can educate her here, if she's still around, Victoria. How many people here, if you'd raise your hands, are from a family farm? I want to see, right. I hope we can see that. I hope we've got our cameras from the show up high to see. That's a lot of hands. Now, keep them up, and I want you to lower them if you think, and you've had time to work this out, you think you're going to be unaffected by the changes to APR and BPR. Put your hands down if you're going to be unaffected. Thank you. My case rests. I want Newsnight to see that. She was trotting out. Nobody's affected. Rachel Reeves says so. Since when was the BBC the mouthpiece of this infernal government? I've got to get the brakes on. The trouble is I'm off my tits on codeine and paracetamol up here. I don't know what I'm saying. But I do want to finish, if I may, with a message to the government. I do. Not a shouty one, it's this. For the sake of everybody here, and for all the farmers who are stuck at home today, paralysed by a fog of despair over what's been foisted upon them, I beg of the government to be big, to accept that this was rushed through, it wasn't thought out, and it's a mistake. That's the big thing to do, admit it, and back down. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
It's been a privilege to report on what I'm sure will not be the last farmers' protest in the centre of London today. And I want to leave you with one thought. We cover a lot of protests here at GB News. We cover the Palestinian marches that we've seen through cities weekend after weekend. We cover the Just Stop Oil protests, the people who go round and throw paint on buildings, throw soup on paintings, smash windows, lie in the roads, feel like the only way they can make their voice heard is by breaking the law. Well, today, we've seen a very different example. We've seen how people can make their voices heard, lawfully, orderly. We've seen how Britain should be. If you have a point to make, if you want your voice to be heard, you can do so lawfully. You can do so legally. You can have your march. You can have your rally. You don't have to break the law. You don't have to block the roads without any sort of permit. And you certainly don't have to go around smashing windows. Perhaps some other protesters could take some cues from our farming communities. Well, I've been Tom Harwood for GB News. Don't forget to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel for more.